Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle from WeAreSC.com. A lot going on in college football. We got bowl games to talk about, playoff controversies, surprise firings, and maybe a little bit about the state of the program and where we think this program is, where it's going, what we like, what we don't like. Who knows? Who knows what's going to come up? We're always full of surprises. Okay, fellas, let's jump into this right away. Can I just say it? Can I just come out and say it directly that it's hard to get excited about bowl games in the time of college football where you have 12 team playoffs? I mean, it used to be that, that going to the Rose Bowl was the apex, right? That was something to look forward to. New Year's Day was the best day of the year. Citrus, cotton, fiesta, rose, sugar, orange. You get them all on the same day. So let's see if we can get excited about this bowl game. Alamo Bowl against an 8-4 TCU team. Mark Culkin, you're an optimistic sort. Why don't you tell us why we should be excited that USC or some portion of the USC team, whichever portion decides to play, is going to play whatever players from TCU who also decide to participate in this bowl game in the beautiful city of San Antonio. Go ahead.
Yeah, so they get a chance to win 10 games. That's it. That is it. That's the positive. And then, obviously younger players get more practice time to kind of ready themselves for 2026. So chance to show the coaches what you're capable of, where you're getting more first and second team reps, assuming those younger players get those during practice. There's not a lot. I mean, you have the back storyline with Lincoln Riley and Sonny Dykes being friends, knowing each other since, Lincoln was 18, according to Sonny. Um, I don't know. I've never been to San Antonio. I'm looking forward to the Riverwalk and eating some tech.
Riverwalk's nice. It
Yeah,
is. Yeah.
staying at the Emily Morgan, which is an interesting name for a hotel. Maybe you can. What's the store? Who is Emily Morgan, by the way? People, let me know in the comment section.
Couldn't tell you if maybe she was famous once upon a time in San Antonio, but I've never lived in San Antonio. I've only been there like 4 times.
Yeah, so I don't know. Look, it's a bowl game. One more game, chance to see players play. Other than that, I mean, the only thing that really disappointed me about the Alamo Bowl itself is why USC is getting stuck with the 10th place team, whatever they are, 8-4. Why so many rungs down the ladder? Why not BYU? Why not Houston? Iowa State, I get it. They don't want to play in a bowl game because they don't have a head coach. But I mean, Ole Miss is finding a way to survive in the playoffs without their head coach. I mean, they're transitioning to Pete Golding. Why can't an interim just take over? I don't know. That's why I think so many people are just interested in the bowl games themselves, the postseason. Even Notre Dame is getting all hype, hoity-toity about this thing, and they don't want to play.
Well, Notre Dame in my lifetime has passed on bowl
Yeah,
games
this isn't
before.
the first.
This is not the first time they've done it. But so a couple of things about that. One, Mark just told everybody where he's staying in San Antonio, which strikes me as very unwise. He's going to be mobbed like the Beatles. Um, but putting that aside, Eric, we'll talk about Notre Dame's situation in a little bit, but the teams that are saying no to the bowl games are essentially saying no to what amounts to an extra spring practice. Isn't that a little bit nutty for the future of the programs?
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. I don't understand it at all. I mean that's what's happened with bowl games for me is we've collectively decided, sorry, TV has made us collectively decide that the only things that matter are the playoff games. And then we're going to get 60 more of them next year and 100 more the year after that, right? It's going to be all playoff games from the start of the year. But so I understand that part of it, right? Everything is about did you win the national championship? You cannot win the national championship unless you make the playoff. If you do not make the playoff, what are we even doing here at this point? Like I get that for this season, but you shift your mindset to okay, now this is the 26th season, right? You're still gonna have seniors and all that. You're still gonna have your Kyle Ford, right? End of the career game winning touchdown. Like those stories will still be there for these, but you just lean in hard to the freshmen who can play now, right? Who this game doesn't count for your four. You can throw USC, can throw Hussein Longstreet out there as much as you want. Like you can do that kind of stuff. And so I think that's where it is. This just really sort of is your preseason game for next year. And, everyone's talked about that a lot. How great would it be to play, a spring game scrimmage against another program or have the first game not really count? Like, I know it's far away from the games that do count, but that's sort of what this feels like. And I think how you want to treat it, it'd be great to get a 10th win and all that, but your recruiting class is done. You don't need to do it, right? There used to be like, oh, if you can win your bowl game in December, like then you can put that January run together and maybe get some more guys. Don't really need to do that. I think right now you really need to get a sense of who can we actually trust next year. Are there other holes that we need to go in the transfer portal? And then you're balancing like what's real, what's not real, and all that stuff. But that's where I am with it, right? Let's see the freshmen, let's see the redshirt freshmen, like let's see the young guys who you're gonna have to count on next year.
I agree with everything you just said, Eric. So I just want to push back on that 10th win thing. I think it was proven this year that you want to start off in the preseason poll because if you don't and you're USC, that climb in and staying there and giving yourself a fighting chance at a playoff so you can make the argument, well, we're 9-3 like Alabama. I mean, I'm not saying they deserve to be in the playoffs, but 10 wins means a lot unless your name's Notre Dame.
Look, 10 wins is a nice thing anyway. It's better to have wins and losses. It's a little bit weird that bowl games even count towards wins and losses under the circumstances, but they do, and they count towards the final poll. And here's the way, here's the way the preseason polls work. They look and see where teams finished the previous year, and then they ask themselves which team has a returning quarterback, and then they slide them up or down on that. If USC wins their bowl game, they're going to finish, say, number 12, right? Number 12 in the country, maybe 11. Who knows? I mean, we'll see who else loses, but they probably finish somewhere around number 12 in the final AP poll. If Jaden Mayava comes back, and I think he will, then in preseason they're going to be number 6 or 7, and being number 6 versus number 24 does matter as things go on. It does matter. Now, it matters a little bit less than it used to just because when you allow 12 teams in, you don't have to win as many games to get in. And because the one poll that matters doesn't start until late in the season, but it's still pretty similar to what everybody else has in the other polls. So that matters. But Greg, the other thing that matters that we've been talking about is player development. USC has a bunch of young guys on this roster. They have a bunch of young guys who are going to come in and practice with the players during bowl season, who are early entrants. They can't play in the game, but they can be on the practice field. Look, you have spring practice, which isn't very long, and you have fall camp, which lasts for about 3 weeks before you actually get into your game prep mode. Once you're in game prep mode, it's not that these young guys can't improve, but it's certainly the case that they're not getting first team reps. They're usually not even getting reps in their team's offense or defense. They're off doing scout team stuff, a lot of these guys. I mean, to have an opportunity to have what amounts to an extra spring practice for the young guys on the roster strikes me as way too important to pass up, even if you think bowl games are stupid, or even if you're mad at the bowl selection committee. What do you think about that, Greg? And then tell me if you're USC's coaching staff, what's your goal in this bowl practice, other than preparing to play well against TCU? But I mean, what are you trying to accomplish in these extra practices that you get?
I think what you want to do is you want to say we're a pretty good team. We just didn't get to the playoffs, but we're a pretty good team. Now, honestly speaking, playing TCU with all due respect is a little underwhelming. It's I've been to San Antonio a number of times, and I like the Riverwalk. I like going over the Alamo. It's an easy walk to go from the Riverwalk to the the Alamo Dome. You can walk it if you want. Yeah, you don't have to be in great shape to do it. So the bowl game itself, I think, is a lot of fun. if it's presented that way. But they're going to have a more of a challenging time. I mean, look, the NCAA, and use basketball as an example, they expanded their number of teams in their men's basketball tournament over the years to more and more and more and more. And what got wiped out? Basically, the NIT got wiped out. And that was kind of a fun little, like, okay, we did make the NCAA tournament, but look, we played in the NIT. It ends up in Madison Square Garden, and that was kind of fun. And, it was kind of like, okay, we can kind of save the season. I think in football, and I've said this from near the very beginning. I've written about it. I've taken heat on it, but it should be a 16-team tournament. It should have been. I think there's too many. We shouldn't be talking about teams that should have made it, that deserve to make it. If you add a couple more teams, four more teams, sure, you're going to say, well, there could be other teams that should have made it if we're going to have 16 teams. But I think, we were talking about certain teams, Notre Dame, whether you agree with what they did or not, this wouldn't even be an issue with a 16-team tournament. I think what you want to get out of this, though, is we're in a situation where if you're in the playoffs, players are going to play. I think the problem is what players will not play in tournament, in bowl games, because they go, well, this bowl game doesn't count. I got to get ready for the draft. And pretty soon, once you start taking away players that would make you say, well, I'll go to that bowl game. I want to see so-and-so play in person. But when you have what we are now, even that we have to even discuss in a way, is Maava going to come back and play in this game? I agree with you, Chris, 100%. He should come back next year to SC for reasons both good for SC and good for Maava. But I think that what's really important is if you have a bowl game and you're going to play, I'm not so worried about the players that come to USC out of high school right away. They get a chance to see what it's about going to college or seeing what being involved in a football practice at the college level. I think that's really good. But in terms of, the younger players, I think that's good for the younger players to practice, especially if they know they're actually going to play or they have a chance to make an impression before spring ball. I think that's a really important factor. Everything is about perception. Perception sometimes is considered reality. So, I want to see, one of the things that's unique about what's going on with SC is the players that are going to the portal. I'm not saying that I think the players that have gone to the portal, I wish they wouldn't have gone, or they would have gone, but it changes your roster for your bowl game. I don't think these players could be going into the portal right away or declaring if SC was in the playoffs, but they're not. So a lot of these players, more and more, like I take a player like Michael Benuelos, I was surprised he's going into the portal. He did start a game. They're looking for it. He's got experience, and now he's gone. So I think in the end, it's important to have practices for the bowl games. Every player is going to find out why it's important for them, and the coaches, of course, want to see the competition because really the bowl game for SC is really getting ready for next year, in my opinion.
Yeah, the bowl games these days come down to who's actually going to play and who's motivated to play. USC's actually, we give Lincoln Riley credit, the last couple of years, he's gotten USC to actually act like they care about these bowl games, and they've gone out and gotten a couple of wins, and those wins helped at the end of what were really disappointing seasons. It gives you a little bit of optimism going into the off season, but it's hard to look. We can't even talk about this game yet. I don't want to do any sort of preview where we talk about. I don't know who these teams are going to have on them. Right? We have no idea who's going to be on the field for these two teams. So I guess we'll just wait. TCU throws the ball a lot. They don't run it very well. They're Sonny Dykes' team. That seems to be a good fit for this particular USC team, meaning that they can't stop anybody from running, but maybe they can stop somebody from throwing the ball all over the yard. I'm sure USC, if they have their guys show up, will move the ball up and down the field on TCU. But again, it comes down to who's actually going to show up and who cares about playing. And really, the most important thing for the program is not the game itself, because going in, you're going to be playing a bunch of freshmen and backups in these games in a game that doesn't really matter that much. The most important thing are the weeks leading up to it and what sort of development you can do in the process. Before we walk away from this, guys, anything else you want to say about the Alamo Bowl? We'll
I
talk.
think
I
We have
mean,
plenty of time to talk about it in coming weeks, but
yeah, the one early is Kendall Briles, right? The TCU offensive coordinator is going to be hired at South Carolina, and I haven't seen yet if there's any confirmation on whether he'll call plays or not. So again, yeah, that's a team that is USC matches up well with them if you show up and want to play. You have the wrinkle now of who's calling plays and what do they do and do they, is it six backup quarterbacks throwing fake punts all over the place in that one?
it's still Sonny Dykes. I think we have some idea what that offense is going to look like. But all right, whatever. I mean, we've had some bowl games against TCU over the years that I didn't enjoy very much. I hope we enjoy this one more. Yeah, Mark.
I was gonna say, if you're Waymon Jordan, do you play in this game? Do you come back next year? I mean, you've missed
Well,
the entire year.
maybe two different questions, right? I mean, if I'm Waymon Jordan, I don't think I play in this game unless I'm completely healthy, and I want to go to the NFL and I want to give him a little bit more film. But Wayman Jordan played junior college in a handful of games. I mean, it's tough enough to get drafted highly as a running back in the NFL these days. It strikes me as nutty to leave, especially when what's he going to be? A sixth, seventh round pick, a free agent? He probably makes more money if he comes back to USC. I mean, it would be nuts for him not to. In the old days, that wasn't the case, right? Because unless you played in the SEC, you weren't getting paid, and that means that you have to. That means that you have to go to the NFL if you want to get some money and support your family. But Wayman Jordan would probably get a pretty good NIL package from USC next year. So he
It's
should.
also the running back thing is the injury risk too, right? Like you go, but you also have to show you're a little bit durable because right now it's he didn't make it through a season at that level. So again, you don't want to come back and get hurt again, but you're also going to go in there with that knock of didn't hasn't made it through a year, and there's JUCO and all that stuff in there too, but. That would be, I'd assume that'd be a talking point for him to come back.
Yeah, and look, there's always the thing about some of these guys just don't like school, right? And if you really don't like putting up with school, then maybe you don't want to have to put up with two more semesters of it. I have no idea whether that's a case with Jordan or not. I don't know. I don't know the kid. I haven't seen his transcripts,
How
but
and how much school is that right? Cardell Jones
yeah,
set the record a while ago.
yeah, no, that's right. And look, I think there are schools where most of these guys get pushed unless they're real student athletes, and there are some at every school, and certainly at a place like USC there are. But a lot of the guys that aren't, they're just really fast and big, and they get pushed into the easy majors, and they have tutors. I don't think they're working all that hard to pass their classes, but even at that low bar, there are plenty of guys who just don't want to go to school.
Nobody brings up APR anymore, and with the transfer portal, it's almost impossible to keep that thing on a steady level field because how can you say everybody's advancing? You got progress advancing towards a degree when they're there for a semester or two before they're off to their next, school of choice.
Yeah. All right, that's enough. We'll talk about the Alamo Bowl in coming weeks. Maybe. Maybe we won't. I don't know. But we're going to talk about the playoff controversy because now that college football is all about the playoffs, and that's all that anybody cares about, we get the kind of circus that we got this past week. Guys, I'm going to make a couple of claims, and I want you to tell me whether I'm right or wrong. Claim number one, Notre Dame is one of the 5 best teams in the country. Claim number two, Notre Dame also didn't earn a playoff berth because they played 3 good teams all year and they lost at 2 of them. Greg, response.
Well, I think it was a bad look for Notre Dame not to go to an alternate bowl game. Notre Dame is not the same as it once was when the old systems were in place. where they could say, well, we're not going because we don't like the bowl games that were an option to us. I could understand that. But we're in a different era now. Look, you lost to Miami, okay? And I really take a big look at that and say it doesn't matter whether it was the first game or the 10th game. Bottom line is you played them, okay? And you lost to them. I know it was incredibly early in the season, but if it got down to both of your teams to get into the playoffs, I can't think of a better thing to say. Well, you played them and you lost to them. That's the way it goes. I mean, I remember when SC, decades and decades ago, beat Alabama down in Alabama and ended up, tied with them for number one, which was ridiculous because SC played Alabama and beat them. So my feeling with
Alabama getting favored by the voters hasn't changed over the years, Greg. This is still happening.
There's no question about that, Chris. I think that Notre Dame, to show that the playoffs, I mean, first of all, Notre Dame's on a losing perception because nobody's going to care about Notre Dame. They're only going to care about the playoffs. You didn't get in, fine, you didn't get in. Okay, so take your ball and don't come back. And what bothered me more was hearing that if Notre Dame next year was in the same situation, they would get in. And I don't think you should be doing that. I think Notre Dame, if you want to be independent, fine. But you really should be in a conference under the way things are now, but you don't want to? Okay, fine. But, again, I hate to say this, but if they would open it up to 16 teams, they wouldn't have this problem.
If they open it up to 16 teams, they're going to let 9 teams in that can't possibly win it, too.
Well,
that's the reality.
Chris, wouldn't you agree with me that they're letting in teams that probably aren't going to win it? You really think the Tulane?
That's right. It should be 8
to get in.
It should be 8. At 12, they already have teams that have no business being in. At 16, USC would be in. Does USC have a legitimate chance to win a national title this year?
Do you really think SC would be in? Do you really think SC would be in if they had 16 teams?
If you just took the top 16, they would be. They're in the top 16.
You bet your life and reputation on it.
Well, I don't think I need to bet my life on something so trivial, Greg. I'll pass. But I will point out that if you just took the top 16 teams, they would be in the top 16. That just shows that 16 is too many. But whatever, at least that gets rid of a bye. Well, look, go check out the lower divisions and tell me how many times the 13th seed has won the title.
The only reason those schools are eligible is because they needed those schools to agree on a system that we have in place. Because let's face it, if you look at the final college football playoff rankings, where was James Madison ranked? Weren't they ranked number 20 or something in that position?
I'm not shilling for James Madison. Everybody in the world knows it's silly that they're in the playoff. I'm pointing out that.
I agree with you on that. But the bottom line is they got in over a team like BYU. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Whatever. I'm just suggesting that Miami and Alabama also don't belong in the playoff. They don't. They're not good enough. They haven't earned it. But I'm fine with 16 teams if that's what they're going to go to. It just seems to me that it's probably too many. But Notre Dame's fundamental problem is that they play a weak schedule now. They do. They played 3 good teams this year and they lost 2 of them. Yes, 2 of those games were close. Yes, they're at the beginning of the season. But that they were rolling through the schedule they played at the end of the season, I don't think that's impressive anybody. And so if you have a Miami team and a Notre Dame team with the same record, it's not crazy to me that people would say, okay, we'll pick Miami. They beat you. I mean, Miami probably isn't as good as Notre Dame. I'll concede that. I think if they played today in a neutral field, Notre Dame probably beat them by 10, 14 points. But you did lose to them. So how is it crazy that they got in ahead of you? I mean, I don't get that. It's not nuts. That's at least a reasonable way to look at it for the tantrum that Notre Dame is throwing.
And don't you set up that schedule to you win those first 2 games and you just coast? I mean, you moonwalk into the playoff, right? I mean, that's how it was set up. You win those games and you're in the playoff, and you didn't win either of them and you're out of the playoff. Like that seems fair. It seems like the handshake that you made, right?
They have 3 good teams on the schedule. They play 2 of them at home. You got to win 2 of the 3. You win 2 of the 3, you're a shoo-in. You probably get a bye. So Is Notre Dame good enough to be in the playoff? Yeah, I would probably favor them over all but maybe 4 or 5 teams in the field on a neutral field. I think they're really good. I think they're really good. I also don't think they earned anything. I mean, they didn't. They played a weak schedule and they lost 2 of the 3 teams they played who were decent. So whatever. I mean,
What's tough about it though is that I think what it like the you hope the lesson Notre Dame learns from it is join a conference, win a conference. That's why James Madison's there, right? That's why Tulane's there. That's the only reason they won their conference. But what's gonna be taken from it probably is let's dumb it down, go 12 and 0 and dare them to keep out a 12 and 0 Notre Dame team, right? And so that's the difference of is it the most deserving teams or is it the best teams? The
yeah.
most deserving teams, I think you're always going to get to winning the game on the field. And then that's where that first number in your record is always going to play a role. The deserving teams is where you can open it up, or the best teams is where you can open it up to a 3-loss team that, oh my gosh, that schedule was brutal and they are rolling right now at the end of the year. Maybe we reward that. And then you have a reason to play those tough games and that sort of thing. But this one feels like another step towards make it easy, pile up wins.
Well, and Texas too, right? Because Texas is not a team that had 3 losses and was rolling at the end. Texas is a team that had 3 losses, could have had 6, and they just happened to beat one team at the end. Despite that, when you listen to Sarkisian talk about this, Mark, all he's talking about is, oh, well, we got punished for playing a tough non-conference team. I guess we're going to have to stop doing that. So, I mean, we're headed farther and farther down that road. And Mark, by the way, when Jen Cohen and Lincoln Riley are watching this, you know this is going to have an impact on one of our favorite topics. Everybody's going to start screaming that I brought it back up, but you know it's going to have an impact because you look at USC's schedule next year, even without Notre Dame on it, it's challenging. You look at it with Notre Dame on it, and it's absurd. And so I think they're going to say, look, Notre Dame's not playing 6 good football teams next year. They're going to play a couple. And now Texas is going to drop their tough non-conference games. Georgia, I think dropped their tough non-conference games in 1936. So, Mark, this is the direction we're headed, isn't it?
You know, I'm not sure how to get involved in this discussion because I don't want to be a hypocrite. Do me a favor, humor me. Just humor me. We know Notre Dame doesn't play in a conference, okay?
Yeah.
Typically, if Boise State was an out-of-conference game for USC, what would we be saying? That's a pretty good out-of-conference game to put on USC's schedule. Yes? No?
Sure.
Okay. Why is Notre Dame being say, well, they had a weak schedule when they put Boise State? I'm not trying to go to bat for Notre Dame, but I just want to do a comparison here. When USC played Arkansas, was that considered a good out-of-conference game?
Yeah. Do you remember who Arkansas had in their backfield?
We cannot control an aspect.
I mean,
no, on a just big picture scale, is Arkansas considered a good out-of-conference game?
I certainly thought they were a legitimate non-conference team when USC played them. Yes.
The answer is yes. Who would North Carolina State compare to in the big conference if we're talking about Notre Dame's having to play ACC teams? Who is North Carolina State in the Big Ten? Minnesota?
I mean, I think Minnesota would probably beat them on a neutral field, but I don't know, maybe.
Again, what is an easy schedule? I mean, I can do game by game comparison.
Well, look, you asked about Boise.
What do you do with the regular season? Let's just say the playoffs start game 1. Everybody's in. And it's like a double or triple elimination type of fucking thing.
Why? Well, I guess you got to beat that out. It's a children's show, Mark. You know how many 8-year-olds watch this. Listen,
the point that the direction college football is going, it's getting infuriating. And the more I see people on the USC WeAreSC.com message board saying, I'm ready to drop Notre Dame, you're ready to drop college football. I'm
You know what I think about that. I'm agreeing. But
I
here's the
really don't
thing.
even have this discussion anymore because it's a combination of two different things.
But Notre Dame did play an easy schedule this year, and you brought up Boise State. Boise State lost 34-7 to South Florida. They lost 30-7 to Fresno State. They scored 7 in a loss to San Diego State. That's a garbage football team. They've had good teams in the past, but they're a garbage football team this year.
It's also what Notre Dame's going to have to deal with. Notre Dame's strength, like USC's strength of schedule in the Big Ten, is going to be at this level every year. You're going to get some years where it's tough. You're going to get some years where, glad we missed Indiana the last couple of years. Like, we thought missing Ohio State the first 2 years would be great. Not playing Indiana has been really nice too. So if you're an independent, that stuff's gonna happen. We thought Boise State would be good. They were in the playoff last year. Well, they're terrible this year, so you don't get credit for that because it's gonna be what happens on the field. And so that's where Notre Dame, I mean, is has to be desperate for USC to stay on their schedule, because if you drop that off, these teams are not playing Notre Dame in November. You're going to finish your season with 3 high school teams, and you're going to have to go undefeated every single year. Although now we're learning that they just get to walk their way in because they have this secret agreement now.
This is also why. Go ahead.
It doesn't matter if the game's even played in September anymore. We don't want to play Notre Dame. It's just like you can't.
Well, besides, the September thing is a problem for Notre Dame. Notre Dame has no trouble getting quality opponents in September. Notre Dame has trouble getting quality opponents after September.
Talking about the USC fan base, right?
Yeah. No, the USC fan base is silly. Look, they hate Notre Dame for understandable reasons. Sure. I also hate Notre Dame for understandable reasons because I'm a red-blooded American male and I love God and I love justice. Of course, I hate Notre Dame. But look, the problem with USC fans is they take, I hate Notre Dame to, whatever Notre Dame wants, why we don't need them, we don't care about them. Look, it's a huge part of USC football history. And we do need Notre Dame. We don't need Notre Dame in order to have a good schedule. We don't. But we need Notre Dame because this is one of college football's most important traditions. It's absolutely one of USC's most important traditions. And all of you who are saying we play a tough enough schedule without Notre Dame, I understand. I agree with you. I'm just saying that in an age when we've ripped up and set on fire almost all of college football's traditions, I'm only saying there's one that I'm not willing to give up at this point. And all of you guys are, and most of you sound petty doing it. Well, they need us more than they need them. I don't care. Maybe they do. It's still USC Notre Dame, and it's ridiculous that we're not playing it. But you know what, Mark? We're not going to play it. We're not going to play it because Jen Cohen and Lincoln Riley are looking at the situation, and they're saying what everybody else is saying, which is you cannot add difficult games to your schedule because it only makes it harder to make the playoff. And if you don't make the playoff in today's college football, you are irrelevant. That's it. That's where we're headed, man.
And we're going to 16 teams. And again, even with Notre Dame on the schedule, if USC can't qualify to be one of the top 16 teams, as you've been saying, do they really belong in the playoffs anyways? Yeah. So play the game.
You know what? I'll tell you what. I think of SC. First of all, the way the conferences are shaking down now, a lot depends on which conference you're in. If you're in the SEC or the Big Ten, you're going to have a tough conference. It's just going to be how tough is it that particular year, because there's just too many good teams, like say 1 through 4, and depending on how many, if we have a 16-team playoff, that'll be a little bit easier, but. Even the ACC, when you look at that, or the Big 12, you're going to get to the point where you're going to have, because you're in a conference, and the conferences get stronger. You already got a tough schedule, and maybe the non-conference games shouldn't have the impact. And like SC, I was writing about it for my Sunday column. If SC was to play Notre Dame, under the way things are now, I would say play Notre Dame in the second game of the season. And then it's early. It's in September. You find out a lot of things. It shouldn't go against SC or Notre Dame if they lose and it's a good game. It really should come down to how you do in a conference. Notre Dame is not in a conference. They don't want to be in a conference. And all these other teams, whether it's the SEC, the Big Ten, or the Big 12, the schools in those conferences should not be penalized because they're going to have tough gains because they're in a conference. Notre Dame by far needs USC on their schedule. Who
Mhm.
else are they going to be? Because all the other schools will come to the conclusion that what do we have to gain by playing Notre Dame? Okay. Notre Dame is going to find out it is phasing itself out of importance because schools are going to figure out if we don't play them in September, we don't want to play them once we get into the league. I mean, it's really amazing when you think that SC would play Notre Dame once your conference schedule is underway. And if it's going to be changed, it's got to be changed in the first three games. And I wouldn't recommend playing Notre Dame the game before you start Big Ten conference. You don't know what your schedule. Who wants to play Notre Dame? And then the next week you go, we're opening with the Big Ten and we're playing Ohio State. That
USC sandwiched a road trip to Notre Dame between a game against Michigan and a road trip to Nebraska. I mean, that's what they did, and that is a little bit wild. But you're right, Notre Dame is in trouble because Texas and Notre Dame played a home and home a few years ago. Texas isn't going to schedule Notre Dame again. There's no way in the world after this season where Texas run around complaining, well, we played Ohio State, lost by 7 on the road, and that's what kept us out of the playoff. They're not going to schedule that game. Nobody's going to schedule that game unless you make it where the conference gets automatic bids, which is what the Big Ten was asking for, at which point you can play that game if you want to in the preseason. But it will also count essentially as a preseason game, right? Because it doesn't really matter anymore. If the playoff is all that matters, whether you beat Notre Dame or don't beat Notre Dame, you have to finish in the top 4 of the Big Ten to get in the playoff, and the playoff's all that matters. So I don't know. I think Notre Dame is in trouble, and maybe that's why their coach is going to go coach for the New York Giants next year. I don't know.
By the way, Chris, Texas and Notre Dame play in 2028. Just throwing it out.
We'll see. We'll see. I mean, that was scheduled long in advance, right? And so they still have teams on their schedule. But when they're trying to set up the home and away with Alabama in 2029, I don't think it's going to happen.
I think with Notre Dame is what they're learning is this isn't the scheduling they want. They can't put games where they want to play them. They can't play SC at the end of November in Los Angeles anymore. The schedules do not work in Notre Dame's favor, and they're going to have to figure out, look, if Notre Dame doesn't get in the playoffs are still going to go on. People are going to say, oh, they didn't get in. Oh, I miss Notre Dame being in the playoffs. But in the end, you know something? The games will go on. It's like UCLA. If they don't make the playoffs, let's say in basketball, just as an example, when everyone say UCLA, it's UCLA in basketball. Hey, the game didn't die out. The playoffs didn't die out. The playoffs went ahead. And now it's a question of, hey, is UCLA going to get in the playoffs? And the same thing will happen in football. The same thing will happen. My thing is Notre Dame's going to learn the hard way.
The right play for Notre Dame would have been to join the ACC, but instead they decided to set fire to that relationship this week. The ACC, they're playing half an ACC schedule already. And if they could find some way to hold on to some additional revenues, they could probably afford to be there, and it gives them an easy path to the playoff. If they,
did you hear their athletic director? I think it was today or it was last night. The athletic director for Notre Dame trying to make it sound as though they had a tremendous schedule. I think it was this year, and I listened to it and I said, "Boy, if you're trying to defend why you didn't get in because of your schedule, you just made an idiot out of yourself."
All right, that's enough Notre Dame talk. I don't like the Irish. So we know who's not going to be part of a bowl game this year, and that's Coach Moore at Michigan. Sharon Moore gets fired, and it's going to be a scandal. They're going to try to avoid paying him. There's going to be litigation. All that's going to happen, and now Michigan is scrambling to find a coach. I suspect it's one thing to promote the most senior assistant when you just won a national title and you've been on a run. And you promote Moore hoping that it'll be David Shaw and can keep the momentum, the Harbaugh momentum going for 7 or 8 years. He couldn't. Now, I don't know. I mean, they'll probably, you can always hire an NFL assistant coach, I suppose, when the season ends. But certainly puts Michigan in a tough spot hiring a coach right now in a year when so many other major programs have already hired theirs, missing out on Matt Campbell
Well,
by about 4 or 5 days.
this is look, coaching searches are not normal anymore. They're not. They didn't miss out on anybody. Michigan's got money. I If they want Matt Campbell, is there a number? There's a number. I think there's a number, right? It'll sound strange. These guys have taken jobs, all of that. I don't know. I don't know.
Go
There's a
offer
handful of
22 million a
programs.
year to Kurt Signetti.
I think there's a handful of programs that can operate in a way where they say nobody's off the table. I think Michigan with its backing is probably one of those.
I think Eric's right. I think this, if you name the right number, in this day and age, people get out of contracts, people pay each other off. If you got the bucks to pay off another coach, to bring another coach in, it happens. I agree with Eric.
Yeah, but here's the problem, though. The problem is that because of the changes in college football, I don't know that you have to be at Michigan to win anymore. Right? I mean, Kurt Signetti at Indiana has put together two really good football teams. They apparently have ample money for NIL. I don't know. In the old days, you look at it and say, all right, like when Gary Barnett had that great year at Northwestern, you said, okay, but you can't do that consistently. You got to get out. And he probably got out a year or two too late and ended up at Colorado instead of taking a Notre Dame job or something like that. But you knew he had to go. I don't know if Signetti looks at it that way now. He may look at it and say, as long as I have the NIL budget I need, I have credibility with recruits. If I have money, I'll be able to bring guys here. There's no reason I can't beat Michigan head up at Indiana. And if that's the way it is, then maybe there's no reason for him to go, even if Michigan offers a lot of money. I don't know.
I think that's true. I just don't think Michigan sits there and goes, "Oh man, we lost our shot at all those guys." Like they're going to take swings at the guys that they want, no matter what their contract situation is or where they've moved.
I hope they hire Kiffin. I think it would be hilarious if Lane Kiffin left LSU. He's the only guy who could do it, right? He's the only guy who could so thoroughly infuriate an entire state and would willingly do it.
Look, before he left Ole Miss, I sent text. I said, I'm calling my shot here. He goes to LSU. DeBoer goes somewhere else. Alabama hires him away from LSU, and that's going to be his offseason.
How about Michigan just kicking Michigan State little brother in the nuts and saying, Pat Fitzgerald, come up here? I mean, there's so many, like you said, if there's a number, why not? Why not use Nick Saban as a Band-Aid for a couple of years so you can actually find your next head coach? A lot of options.
Well, then you'd have to have someone follow Nick Saban.
They're going to pay $30 million a year for Lane Kiffin, and LSU fans are going to burn every car and every mattress in the state, and I can't wait to watch it. It'll be hilarious.
I mean, Jed Fish is an easy name to throw out. He's been there before. He's had success everywhere. He would be. Good coach. I think there's a couple guys who probably get there and hit the ground running. He's shown he can do it at multiple places. Like he would be, I think, as plug and play as it gets. Now, if you're Michigan, how much pride do you have, I guess, in getting a guy who, does he make Ryan Day nervous? Does he make the SEC they'll want to splash, especially after Sherrone Moore,
I'd call Kalen DeBoer. I'd call Kalen DeBoer right now because
one of the first calls.
Right? I mean, that guy's a really good football coach who's in an impossible situation where you knew when you took the job, when you replace Nick Saban, you'll never, ever satisfy the fan base. It's impossible to satisfy the fan base if you replace a guy that won that many titles. DeBoer may look at it and say, man, I'd much rather replace Sherrone Moore than Nick Saban. I'll take your $14 million a year. I don't know. I mean, I obviously don't know the guy, but that's not crazy to me. I could see him making that jump. You're muted.
You get into the playoffs at Alabama when you're 9-3. I don't know if you do that with Michigan. So there's a little bit of leverage play there.
Yeah, but they made the SEC championship game, and making the SEC championship game is not an easy thing to do. I don't think there's ever going to be a time when the team that loses the SEC championship game doesn't make a 12-team playoff. I just don't think that's ever going to happen. Okay, let's go back to USC. This is the USC show. What are we doing, guys? We're not even talking about USC. We're talking about all this other stuff. This is what I want to talk about now. I want to, on a weekly basis, we talk about what's gone right, what's gone wrong. And so if we just talk about the past year, then I think we're doing a recap of 12 conversations we've already had. But I'm curious your perspectives on where this program is, how much of a jump forward was made this year, how much of a jump forward should we expect next year, and where are the things that you look at and say, man, I thought we'd be in a much better spot over there, and it worries me. Okay, so let's start with question number one. Greg Katz, how much of a leap forward did USC make? Was it a leap? Was it a small step? Did they stand in place? What do you think?
You talking about this season per se, or
Yep.
what the program is today?
Where is the program today versus 12 months ago? Did they take a leap forward, a small step forward, or are they treading water?
I think they took a step forward. If they, Mark mentioned it, the 10 wins does make a difference, in my opinion, for perception for where they are now. Now, if they are 10-3 next year and they don't get in the playoffs, they got a big problem because you'll have completed 5 years of Lincoln Riley and they're not in the playoffs. We know that after 4 years, they're going to the Alamo, but they're not in the playoffs. This goes back to the recruiting, the philosophy, the portal, everything in the second year after the first year of Lincoln Riley. But people say, "Well, was this year a success?" It was a successful winning number, but the idea when you're at USC, as you would be at any of the elite schools, Alabama, Ohio State, you have to win big. Winning is nice, but you know what? When you look at an Indiana and you say, wow, in this second season, this guy's the number one team in the country, and you say, okay, we're we're into the fourth season with Lincoln Riley. How come that's not us? And to me, there has been, if Lincoln Riley, he did say that, he has some regrets about, I think, the second year, whatever, the philosophy with the portal and the high school stuff. All that should have been known when he took the job, in my opinion. But it isn't what happened. So I think that if they finish the season, I realize that TCU isn't, Ohio State or isn't, Georgia or any. I understand that. But just for this season, if they could finish out 10-3, I'd say, okay, you had a nice, successful season. It doesn't end on a downer note, but I will tell you this, they better win against TCU. And my feeling is they better be impressive against TCU, because just beating TCU is people going to say, well, of course, TCU is 5-4 in their conference. Why wouldn't SC beat them? They should beat them, and they should beat them bad, 3 touchdowns or whatever, by at least that. And I think that there's a lot of pressure from that standpoint. But, you know, they did the best they could with what they have. If it wasn't for a field goal, probably at Illinois at the end, walk up, they might have made the playoffs. And then everybody say, well, at least they made the playoffs. They got that really shows increase that they made the playoffs. So they got to make the best out of this season. If they go 10-3, I'll say it was a successful season, but it wasn't a great season.
Yeah, it's hard for me to say that the bowl game is a must-win game when it's a game where you're not even sure who's going to bother to play, and it'll probably get a 2.1 rating. But I mean, I get the point. You want to end on a high note. You want to get to 10 wins. Mark, I'm gonna true or false? True or false? This past year was successful, but mostly off the field. USC fixed its NIL. They did a fantastic job recruiting. They're finishing a building that's going to be immensely helpful going forward, especially recruiting. On the field, it was simply reversion to the mean. Lincoln Riley's offense looked more like a Lincoln Riley offense. His defense continued to look like a Lincoln Riley defense. And it wasn't so much a step forward as it was just to a return to a very average Lincoln Riley team. True or false?
Well, I'm going to say true, and also because you left out the special teams debacle that really contributed to it. So I would say, for comparing what happened on the field to what happened off the field, there was a lot more success off the field that hopefully will contribute to more success on the field going forward. That doesn't mean they didn't have a good year playing football in certain point, at certain points. You beat Michigan, you show that you can play that physical brand of football and you can beat them doing it their way. You showed you can beat Iowa doing it their way in their type of weather. As you mentioned, Lincoln Riley's offense looked more like a Lincoln Riley offense. The running game was working, the tight ends were involved.
Despite the fact that you had casualties like it's Antietam on that offensive line. I mean, that's impressive.
That was my next point. The fact that Zach Hansen is not a finalist for the Frank Broyles Award as the one of the top assistant coaches. What he put together, I mean, he cobbled an offensive line together every single week. Every other game was a new starting offensive line, and then in that game, oh, by the way, now if he's hurt, we got to shove in a walk on or whatever the case might be. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff on the field, just not enough good stuff. Basically comes down to stopping the run and winning on the road against a ranked team.
Eric, let's focus on the field for a second. Where is this program better on the field than you expected them to be? I think he probably stole offensive line from you already. Do you have another one, or is that the only answer we have?
I mean, offensive line is the big one, and important, like hugely important. Know that, at worst we're going to be pretty good up there. Like that's not a bad place to be for an offensive line. It's not where you want to be. You want to be right. Indiana, Iowa, Oregon are the Joe Moore Award finalists. Like you want to be one of those groups. I think that you have the pieces in place to get there now as you go forward. One of my big ones is, and it all kind of is the same thing. The run game this year I thought was good. Like you look at the raw numbers and it kind of looks like last year, and in the two, couple of the biggest games, you couldn't really do a whole lot. And so you'd think like, oh, they got to fix that. They got to figure that out. What they were trying to do it with is not, was not 1A or 1B or one really anything in those games. The fact that I don't really, I mean, it's all, there's always like the easy, like he's Lincoln Riley's going away from the run, abandoning the run, that sort of thing. Like it never felt like he did that, even when you could have gone into that Oregon game and Killian O'Connor goes down, or a couple of those places where it's like, oh, that's it. All throws all the time from this point out. But the sort of the wrinkles he brought, the way it looked, the incorporation of the tight ends, like all of that sort of stuff, when he comes into next year, Lincoln Riley, that is, and says, we want to run the ball, we want to do all that stuff. It's believable. I mean, it was because of what he did at Oklahoma, but there were some flashes where it was like, I don't think you really want to put up rushing yards or test the defense with the run here. And I think that was a step forward, and impressive in kind of figuring out offensive line, running back, all of that when you almost never had your number one group. And then I'll say too, not that it's a surprise, but just another example of quarterback development from Lincoln Riley. I mean, that was big for Jay Maeva to take a step forward. And it's kind of funny because what killed him last year, it kind of came up again this year. Like there were some second half picks and some bad situations and all of that, but I think you just got better sort of every down play, and then really late when you needed it, Jay Maeva was pretty good in making some decisions. So focused on the offensive side. I mean, I don't know if you had like, I'll throw corner secondary development over the course of the year as
Let's be careful though. Let's be careful. I'm not as upset about the secondary play. I believe in the secondary coaches, but let's not
development, right? Is what I would say. Like what you came into the season with was like, what is happening? And then you realize that you had a plan at nickel for fall camp and then for the game week, and then all of a sudden it's we don't have that for like the entire season. So you had some stuff that got thrown around in there, and I think the corners developed fine. What's the word? Fine. Developed
Yeah,
fine
there was
over the year.
progress. Look, okay, here's the bottom line is that offensively, USC is going to be pretty good for the foreseeable future. They have an excellent offensive line coach. This coming year, they're going to have a bunch of returning starters. They've recruited very well at that position over the last couple of years. And if USC has a good offensive line, USC is always going to be able to find receivers to throw to. Lincoln Riley is always going to be able to find and develop a quarterback. USC is going to score lots of points in the coming years. But Lincoln Riley's had plenty of teams that scored lots of points and still lost 2, 3 games, sometimes more. And so the real question is the one that we were batting around before the season started. Can Lincoln Riley have a defense that allows him to have an elite program? New, true, false question. Greg Katz, this one's for you. USC has a defensive staff that is full of guys who have NFL backgrounds, and maybe that doesn't translate very well to the college game. Maybe it's different coaching Aaron Donald and giving him the coaching that allows him to go from spectacular to somewhat more spectacular. Maybe that's different than coaching an 18, 19-year-old kid and teaching him the fundamentals about football when previously he was just bigger and faster than everybody and just smashed people like Hulk. Maybe Rob Ryan, who knows more about defense than all of us combined could ever possibly know, maybe Rob Ryan is an NFL coach that's used to working with professionals, people who already know the game, people who are already developed. And maybe Danton Lynn is an NFL coach. And maybe all of those guys, because they're really NFL coaches, not college coaches, maybe they don't develop as well as we hoped they would. And maybe, just maybe, they actually don't know what a good college defense looks like. And that's why they thought that this defensive line was going to be great and the linebacker room was going to be okay. And they were dramatically, horrifically, devastatingly wrong about both. That's a very long true or false question. It sets you up to do a lot of complaining, Greg Katz. Get to it.
Oh, stop it. What am I complaining at? I don't complain. I just talk what I think, the reality situation. But I think you made some really good points. When you have a player like Aaron Donald and he plays out of his mind and he's one of the really greats that's come along and he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. I don't think there's going to get any argument from that. And then when Aaron Donald says, I think that, Coach Henne was great. He was a great coach. The question I had was, why is he coming from a very comfortable elite situation in the NFL back down to college? What was his goal? He may have already stated it. Did he want to be a defensive coordinator someday? Did he want to be a head coach someday and college was an option for him to learn about it? I didn't understand, honestly. I enjoyed listening to him. He's incredibly entertaining, but the linebacker coach who, his full life has been in the NFL and he gets to be with his son at USC. I think that's very touching. That's nice. But the question is when you watch them play, some people are just, I guess the best way, in my experience, I'm speaking only in my experience, I've met a lot of great high school football coaches that I had no doubt in my mind that they could have gone on to the next level and really been successful. But when you move on, you have to be able to move on to the next level and be good at that next level. Some guys aren't good enough. I had a lot of head coaches tell me, I don't want to go to the college level and coach because I just don't want to have to deal with recruiting young kids. And this is before where we are today in recruiting and the portal and all that sort of stuff. And I kind of admired that. They wanted to be great high school football coaches because they didn't want to have to do what you have to do at the college level. And I think if you're a head coach in high school, to go be an assistant coach at college, you have to be able to, kind of suck it up a little bit and have a goal so much as you want to be a head coach that you're willing to do that for a season or two. And we've seen that at SC happen. Um, I think that some guys just are, I mean, it gets down to this. Everybody in life is a teacher. You say, or a coach. You say, well, how could that be? Everybody, I'm not into sports or whatever. When you start teaching your kids how to tie their shoe, when you get getting them to motivate them how to know the importance of something, and they buy into it. A parent is like the biggest coach and teacher you could possibly have. There's very few that really can produce good kids, and sometimes you have kids that it's just the way they're wired. No matter how good a parent you are, it doesn't make any difference because that's just who they are. At SC, I watched Coach Henney, and I look at the defense that they're running. And of course, I have an open mind. I know that Chris, you have a very open mind on defense because that's something that you put your life and playing into. But how good of coaches are these guys? And my thing was the guy, Lynn came from USC or from UCLA, got a lot of favorable stuff. Now we've seen him a couple years now. Is he as good as we think he is? Is he running the system that we think is good? The argument to me would, well, he's a college coach and you're not. Well, that's the stupidest saying. Well, you're a high school basketball coach and you don't coach in college. Plenty of high school coaches I know were really good coaches and knew just as much as the guys that were coaching at the college level. So in the end,
Well, look, the truth is that there are plenty of coaches that I'm not a college head coach, and I couldn't be a college head coach. But it doesn't mean I can't watch Paul Hackett or Clay Helton and say, well, those guys are no good. So that's a silly argument. But, and I agree with you, Greg. But Eric, talk me off the ledge because this is my new pet theory, and I'm a little bit worried about it. There is a difference between coaching a 27-year-old NFL pro, a guy who's been in the league 5 years, and making him better. There's a huge difference between that and taking a kid who's 17, who's entering college a semester early, and turning him into a good college player. Those may be completely different things, and that may be part of the problem.
Yeah. Sorry, off the ledge?
Off the ledge, yes, you're
Over.
pushing
take him
me
off the ledge,
Oh,
Eric.
over. I thought you said over.
away from ledge.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think there's part of that. And I think it's right. You've got a lot of guys on the roster now based on the early I should say non-transfer portal announcements, right? Guys who at this point seem like they're coming back where you need to take a jump. You need to take a step forward, and we don't know who's coming in and if they're, getting recruited over and starters and all that stuff, how the portal ends up. But the things that I've taken from what Dan Lynn has said in the last coming into this year and then at the end of this year was at the beginning of the year, one of the things that he said that caught my eye, and I mean all the way back like spring ball, beginning of the year, where he talked about how he was surprised that he really enjoyed coaching college kids compared to NFL players, right? Like that was fun for him to coach college kids. What caught my eye, and that was interesting to me because he was an NFL guy and always felt like he's going back to the NFL. So when he says the part that you don't love, now that recruiting's kind of out of their hands, like you don't have to do it as much. It's not as dirty for assistant coaches with recruiting, which was always a problem for NFL guys coming to college. So the issue is, are you okay coaching kids rather than men who have done this for years and years? And so when he said, yeah, I really liked that, that was interesting. What then popped up at the end of the year was when he talked about the pretty significant difference in, college kids are college kids, but there's also some guys who have played for 3 years and come in via the portal as guys who have started multiple seasons. And it's, hey, let's just tweak this a little bit. Hey, let's tweak this a little bit. And then there's the difficulty of a kid who has just no concept of scheme and leverage and all that stuff that makes you a good defensive player. And okay, this is a different type of teaching.
Yeah.
So how how much of an understanding of that did you get? How good are you at that now? And I think that becomes what the offseason is. Although you're bringing back guys that played a lot of snaps. Like you didn't come into this season, right? You needed Desmond Stevens to take a giant step. If Jaden Walker was going to play at all, a giant step. Jade Abasiri got some time last year, but not a ton. Cameron Crawford was like a second year or second half sort of starter. Braylon Shelby played a bit. Like you had a bunch of guys, Marcellus Williams, right? Like can they take that big step? Now a lot of those guys they've gotten the snaps, so can they play like experienced players next
Yeah.
year? I think that's kind of an interesting thing to go with. But yeah, for sure, he said, hey, it was a learning process this year to really get all the way back to the basics of that kind of football coaching.
I mean, my theory may be wrong, but the reason I'm reaching for a theory is because I don't think I've ever seen before what happened this year. It's not that it's not that you had a position group where everybody was young, and so you knew. I mean, it could be tough. It wasn't a situation where you had a good room, and then you had four injuries. I mean, you could say in the secondary that you had a bunch of injuries. But that's not what happened. What happened is that, and USC fans, do not try to rewrite history on me. Don't tell me, no, it was the fans that were excited. The coaches never said, yes, they did. Over and over and over and over again, these coaches said that defensive line room is going to be different. There was talk about how this group they're going to look completely different. We've got size, we've got depth. There was talk about how we think this group could dominate. I actually heard the D word from one of the coaches, and instead, what you had was a debacle, a defensive line that couldn't stop the run and couldn't rush the passer. I'm not sure what else you want them to do, but it seems to me those would be the two things at the top of my list, and they couldn't do either one. You had coaches talking about how Devin Tompkins is going to be a superstar. I'm going to be I'm going to be nice here. You know, they have the baseball stat war, wins above replacement value, where you try to figure out just how many additional wins did you get from this guy versus what you'd have if instead of having Barry Bonds, you had your average major league left fielder in the lineup, right? And they try to calculate that. USC had a bunch of dudes. They pull a guy out of the portal they think can control the A gap. They talk about Devin Tompkins being a superstar. And I would argue that both of those guys were below replacement level players in the Big Ten this year. If you took the average Big Ten defensive lineman and stuck them in instead of those two guys, you'd have had a better team. I don't know how to explain that other than to say the coaches had no idea what they had with this roster. How in the world can that be? And if that's what happened, how can we trust anything they say? How can we trust the portal decisions they make after Keyshawn Silver and after I can't even remember his name because he never played, the corner from San Jose State, who I thought was a great pickup.
DJ Hardy.
Harvey, how do you trust these guys and their portal decisions defensively this offseason when you look at last season and say these guys had no idea what they were doing? Help me, Mark.
Well, here's what's so funny is we talk about the success they had off the field during the offseason. They know how to evaluate high school talent because a lot of what we saw flashed from the younger guys, but they can't figure out the older talent that they need coming from the transfer portal. It's kind of weird. And then we talk about, having the guys who they've been developing on the defensive line, Anthony Lucas and Braylon Shelby and Cameron Crawford, formerly known as Cameron Fountain. They can't affect the quarterback. Well, here's the new excuse. Here's the goalpost being moved. Well, I don't know how you can expect them to affect the quarterback when the opposing quarterback's getting rid of the ball in 2 seconds. It's like, well, maybe because they're getting rid of the ball that quickly because the cornerback is 12 yards off the wide receiver and it's a first down the second you put the ball in their hand. It's I don't know. It's a combination of stuff, but there's always an excuse, and I'm having a hard time keeping up with it. All I know is they're not getting the production. Period.
No, look, They had me fooled. They did. I admit it. I said before the season, this defensive line will be at least good. They'll probably be better than that. Greg was a skeptic because Greg's always a skeptic, but it turns out the skeptics are sometimes right. And they had me fooled. I was convinced that this defensive line would be a really good group. It was not a really good group. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't rush the passer. That's the reality.
If you look at the numbers, right, it's pretty similar, like across the board, to what they did last year. And I think that, right, you expected, holy cow, look at all this. Like, there's going to be a big jump forward. If you balance out, right, Gavin Meyer is not an NFL player. He played a lot of snaps coming over, right? Nate Clifton, Easton Mascarenas Arnold, like the guys that they brought in. It's not like they all just sent them to the NFL. They had a ton of snaps under their belt. So I think the hope for next year, but you're right. I mean, I'll get back to this, but you're right in, I don't think anybody goes into next year going, number one defense, it's right here. It's right here, right? You're going to have to see it again next year defensively. I think the hope is that if you were able to get pretty much the same production dropping a ton of experience. Now, if you can push that experience up and you've seen it and you're comfortable with it, like then is that the jump up again? The glass half look is that, right? You've got snaps under your belt now. The raw talent you hope is still there, and that's where the better production comes from next year. But if they run it back with the same guys, you're not going to go in saying, "Oh, this is the best defensive line in the Big Ten." They're going to have to prove it a few times, I think, before you start to think that, because the numbers after what, 3 games, 4 games, right? It was like, oh, they solved a lot of those problems. They're getting after the quarterback. They're doing this sort of stuff, and then
Yeah. But don't forget, even after those early games, and we had a bunch of comments on YouTube from people that were mad at us for being hypercritical. But even after those early games, we said, you know what? These guys don't get off blocks the way I thought they were going to get off
yeah,
blocks. They
no,
are
sure,
not, right? They are
sure.
not dominating one-on-ones against garbage teams the way, like, you take the Patterson Cody Udeze defensive line. If that defensive line would have played against Georgia Southern, they would have been in the backfield taking the ball from the quarterback before he handed to the running back every down. They would have been unblockable one-on-one, right?
And the fact that you
None of
couldn't get
USC
going in the
guys
first
were.
half, right? That's all part of it. Like you can't show up at just redlining at 100% and go off the snap. That again, that type of defense just tears the heads off those first two teams, right? I mean, they're unblockable when they do that, and so that all sort of wraps into, what's the mentality up there? Like what is that group bringing week to week, game to game, and that's something to watch.
It was never. Go ahead, Mark.
They're a second half group. We saw it all year.
They weren't a pass rushing group in any half. I mean, they couldn't rush a passer ever, but you're right. They played a lot better in the second halves of games, which is frustrating because it looked to me like in the first half of many games, that defensive front wasn't putting in much of an effort. I mean, we saw guys getting driven back 5, 6, 7, 8 yards a bunch in the first halves against Northwestern and Iowa. And I think, wait a minute, what in the world is going on out there? And then they come out and then they play well in the second half and everybody cheers them. And that's fine. Look, it's good to play well in the second half. It would have been a disastrous season if they didn't. But why did they consent to getting pushed around and beat up in the first half every damn week? Can somebody answer that question for me? Why is that okay?
Chris, honestly, if you're a good coach, you know what you're doing, you know what you're taught, you have the ability to motivate, and you're damn tough in being a disciplinarian. And if they understand, if you're going to do what you just said, which was accurate, then you don't play. It's just that simple. You don't play until you do what I want you to do. And I'm going to tell you something. When you take, I've known a couple of coaches that have gone from the high school level to the NFL. And they went up from where I was. Why not even give you the name? Russ Purnell. Great guy. Went from Edison High School to USC, from USC to the NFL. And he came from the low level of organized varsity football for a great program. I think people would remember those teams from the late 70s. And don't tell me, oh, there you go, living in the past. But I knew Russ and I watched him. And he learned, he was great in high school, obviously. He learned what to do at SC. And then he went to the NFL and he was in it for 20 years. So he went from the bottom to the top. I think some of the things that you said, we have coaches that have gone from the top down to college. And it's hard for them to say to a player in their head, this is what I would do. You really don't know anything about football until you learn what I want you to do in football, and you have to do it or you're just not going to play. And the ones that, if I said to you, Chris Arledge, if you don't do what I want you to do, and you don't learn it, you're not playing, Arledge. I don't care what you think you are. The bottom line is when you kiss ass to players recruiting, they think that they're actually better than what they are. And then in this day and age where, well, okay, in 1 year I'm out of here. I don't have to listen to what you say anyway. I'll just transfer to another school and play. Some coaches don't have the ability to deal with players on a psychological level. And you have to be able to do that. The problem is that under Lincoln Riley's head coaching experiences, his defenses have not been very good. Who hires these coaches? The head coach. I would say that if they get rid of some coaches and some guys say, you know what, college isn't for me, I'm going back to the NFL. Good, because that's probably where you best fit. You understand it. But if you don't get how to motivate young kids that are 17 or 18 years old, you know what? It isn't going to happen. And I don't buy the stuff that they didn't play well for a first half, but then they came out like gangbusters in the second half. That's not how it's supposed to be. The really great teams, they come out right away and they put it on you.
The really great teams have something else too. They have on-field leadership that doesn't tolerate that, right?
Well,
I
of
mean,
course.
if you had defensive linemen that put in the type of effort that USC's defensive linemen did in the first halves of most games this year, if you would have had that with Maluga, Cushing, and Matthews at linebacker, you probably would have caught a fist right in your mouth, right? I mean, because the great players have on-field leaders that simply will not tolerate that. I don't know where that leadership was. Now, you could say, well, somebody's getting these guys motivated to play at halftime. That's great, but every team has games where they don't show up and play particularly well. They seem to be flat. They seem to be unmotivated. Pete Carroll had those teams. Nick Saban had those teams. Everybody has those teams. But if it happens week after week after week after week, you have a problem. And USC has a problem. And maybe they'll fix it. Maybe the additional reps, maybe when you have guys like Buchard and Jakeem Stewart with another year behind them, you're going to be so good in the middle of the defense that these problems go away. That's all possible. I hope so. But I don't trust this USC coaching staff knows how to evaluate college players, knows how to motivate college players. I don't trust them.
And is that because of what you've heard them say?
Because I watched all 12 games.
I understand that. I agree with you. But the point is that prior to the season, they laid out a perception of who they were. And then after 12 games, you say, that doesn't look like what you're talking about. And then it goes back to what happened the year before and the year before that. I mean, part of the problem with Clay Helton, one of them was he was a good salesman. He tried to sell things on people, and they go, he's full of you know what. And it got to the point where they had no credibility. And I'm starting to think that he's going to have to look. And I'll tell you what, I guarantee you that Bowden and Cohen, they've got a pretty good idea of what they see. And it'll be very interesting. I'd like to be a fly on the wall when they have a meeting with Lincoln Riley and they get over to what is happening on defense. What do you see? Because here's what we see. And what are you going to do about it? And he's going to have to explain it. And, his credibility is at stake.
Mark Farwell.
I think Coach Riley flexed a little bit there at the end of the season. I mean, he did sit Mackay and Jacoby for that first quarter against UCLA in the rivalry game. So
Yep.
if we're talking about the future and making sure that locker room culture is the way it's supposed to be, all those recruits that were at the game, they're like, all right, well, he's willing to sit those guys. He's willing to sit anybody. So hopefully that message resonated loud and clear.
Look, I'll say this. The best thing you can have if you want to be a good football team is really talented players. I mean, there's no coach that wins with bad players, and it's not a mistake that, or it's not a coincidence that the great coaches, whether it's McKay or Bryant or Saban or Carroll or Meyer, whoever it is, that you look back and say, man, those guys seem to have a whole lot of really good players. Having good players makes it difficult to lose because better players tend to beat worse players, even if the coaching is average. USC's talent level is increasing with this recruiting class and the one that's coming after it. So I'm not suggesting that USC's defense isn't going to get better. I think it probably will. But I'm shaken a little bit. I'm just shaken because what we saw is not what we were told we were going to see. And that makes me think that the guys who were in charge didn't really understand what was going on. And if they didn't understand what was going on last year, I sure hope they learned something over the last 12 months, because otherwise we've got a problem next year. That's the reality. Eric, you want to weigh in on this? He's not anxious to weigh in on this at all. He says, I have to talk to these people.
No, I mean that's it, right? That was sort of the benefit of the doubt on hey, here's what we're gonna be. And now you go into this year with lower expectations, I guess, but needing it to be better, right? It needs to be better, but I don't think you can go in saying, this is going to be a top 2 defense, top 3 defense. Like no matter how it plays out, they're going to have to prove it. And I I don't know. I don't know. It feels like Lincoln Riley likes to just sort of run stuff back. We're getting there. We're getting there. We're moving forward. We're doing that sort of stuff. On in the defensive front, you have to hope that again, all those snaps and seeing it and the experience and all of that really comes into play and really makes that group better.
You know what?
Because
Yeah, you're doing the same thing.
Schedule's tough. Like you got games that you can't be the same. You could be the same team as the 24. Like that 24 schedule, LSU was fine at the beginning, but Washington wasn't great. Minnesota, like those teams weren't great. You could be kind of you could be better and end up with the same record this year, right? And we had said that like the schedule takes a step forward this year in 25. It's the same thing next year. Like the schedule takes a step forward. So when you start hanging, got to go to the playoff, compete for a Big Ten title, like you can't take the same step forward next year that you took this year from last year. It's got to be a more significant step forward if you really want to get where you think you should get.
You can win 10 games in college football with a really good offense. Lincoln Riley's done it a bunch of times. I think he'll end up doing it this year. You can. You cannot be an elite program unless you can play defense. You can't.
Absolutely.
And Lincoln Riley coaching, by the way, at 2 of the top 5 programs in the history of college football for the better part of a decade, has yet to put a good defense on the field. Do I hope that changes? I hope that changes, right? I want that as badly as you want that. But I'm not blind to the fact that if you spend the better part of 10 years coaching Oklahoma and USC and you haven't figured out how to put a good defense on the field yet, maybe that's a you problem.
Well, you have to remember that Riley was under Stoops and he knew defense. SC, waxed him pretty good in the Orange Bowl for the national title, but by and large, he was a good defensive coach, no doubt about it. And you would think if you're hanging around as a coach, even if you're an offensive coach, you would learn and you would see those things. You pick up habits that when you became a head coach, you would try to emulate some of that with your assistant coaches. You know, I'll be honest with you. I have no doubt that all four of us, we are not spring chickens, so to speak. I'm a little older.
McKinney almost is, though.
Yeah.
Almost.
But here's the thing. We have seen it at SC. We have been to practices enough times to know what good really is. And when you said leadership, Chris, if I asked this group of us, who do you think the leader was on defense of this team? I don't know whether you could honestly say 100%. I have the answer to that. Sometimes you see it after plays. You see nonverbal things on television, but when you don't go to when you go to practice, you do see it. I can tell you how many times, and I'm sure many of the people who are watching our show went to Pete Carroll's practices and they saw right up close Ray Malaluga, like you said, Brian Cushing, all of them, Clay Matthews Jr. I mean, you would look at these guys and they were really like assistant coaches, but they were players. And the players would monitor other players. I could tell you that on the teams that win state football championships, there are players on every one of those teams that are like probation officers of their own team. They just have to be players. And they make sure players don't get out of line and they don't lose what they're doing. And I think when you have a great team, when SC has those type of players, once again, they've had them for all their national championship teams. If you want to quiz me on it at another time, fine. I could tell you who the leaders were, easy, because when you're at practice, you would see that. I don't see on this defense who I'd say that guy's the leader. That guy's got the personality. He leads by example. I think basically, honestly, that they played guys on this team on the front seven that they shouldn't have been playing. And I'm saying that's just my opinion from what I observed. I thought that Jakeem Stewart should have been playing a lot more than he was. I think that when he was in there, he made a difference. And I'm saying that to be a positive, put things in a positive perspective. Now, maybe there's some other guys that should have been playing more, and we'll see. But they need to have somebody, two or three guys in that defense that are going to step it up and tell other guys get in line.
Yeah, look, I hate that we've ended this show on such a negative note because I do think there have been a lot of positive things in the program, particularly off the field, but also on the field, right? I mean, going 9-3 against this schedule is much better than what USC had done the two previous years, and the offensive line play, which is so important to a football team, is headed in the right direction, such that I feel confident that the offensive line is going to be very, very solid next year. So it's not that it's all negative. It's just that any organization has what the leadership tolerates. That's what people do. People do what is tolerated, not necessarily what they're told to do, but what people are willing to put up with, the people in charge. And what the people in charge were willing to put up with this year is a front seven that didn't play very hard a lot of the time and got pushed around all the time. That ain't okay. So either they'll fix that or they won't. But if they don't fix it, we got problems again next year. We got to win every game 43-42. All right, guys, that's enough. We've talked enough. It's time to go home. I mean, we're probably already at home. It's time for us to go to virtual home instead of virtual show. Anything you want to say that we haven't yet said that just has to be said? Mark Holkin, you seem to want to say something. No?
No, I'm gonna let you finish with the last word.
All right. Well, I always like that. All right. My last word is thanks for joining us this week. Come back next week. Maybe I won't go on a rant. Maybe we'll be positive. Maybe we won't. Can't tell you. We'll see that then. Until then, fight on, everybody.